All right, well, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you for being here with us today. We are excited to have another chamber exclusive conversation. These have been really nice opportunities to hear from some of our local leaders and get some insight into what life has been like, kind of, both some background before the pandemic hit, but then how things have pivoted and what changes have been made and how companies and organizations and leaders have come through all of this, and then sort of what they foresee for the future. So for today, we have the lovely ladies from Lovering Auto Group joining us this morning. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's nice to be here.
It is nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm very glad. And just so everybody knows, there is a Q&A feature. So you have the option, if you hover down towards the bottom of your screen, to ask questions at any point, and I will relay those over. But we always like to start by giving you a chance to sort of introduce yourselves, give us some background, talk to us about, what a year 2020 has been. And then we'll open things up for questions from the audience. And I have some as well as things move on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the two of you.
All right, great. Well, thank you for having us. I guess I'll introduce myself first. We had planned last second to do this together, so yes. We haven't really practiced or talked too much, but so bear with us a little bit. But my name's Vanessa Delegas, and this is my mom, Linda. Yes. And I'm the current president of our family business, which is Lovering Auto Group. So just a little bit about me. I grew up in Hollis, and I started my career in digital advertising in New York City. I worked for a company called 360i for about a year, working with brands, some fun brands actually, like Saks Fifth Avenue and Smirnoff, and Guinness, Red Stripe, just to name a few. And then I worked for a company after that, which was a marketing startup where we focused on fundraising strategies. One of our larger clients was Merchant Dimes. And timing worked out really well in 2012, I think, where I came back and worked with my family, started out doing marketing for them as there was a need for that role. And I've been here since 2012, and just moved into this role officially, which was my mom's previous role for a long time.
A long time.
In 2000, actually last April. Yeah. And yeah, so do you want to share a little bit about me?
Sure. I'm Linda Lovering. I am from Milford, New Hampshire. Actually raised in Nashua and then Milford most of my life. Went to UNH, ended up in the car business. My husband Rich and I opened our first Volvo store in 1996 in Concord, New Hampshire. And then we opened our Nashua store in 1998. And then in 2004, we built a new store in Meredith, New Hampshire, where I live now. And I've been winding down my career, and Vanessa's been stepping in. She stepped in last year and took the reins. And I'm along for the ride now. More.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah,
it's good.
So so we're a local family-owned brand, which I think is not so common in our business nowadays. I grew up going to a lot of Volvo meetings at the time, it was really all families who owned Volvo dealerships in, whether it was Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Vermont, other dealers that we knew. And I've really, since I've been in the business, have seen quite a change in our industry, a lot of more particularly in Massachusetts, which we do compete with Massachusetts dealers. I shouldn't say compete, but we serve that market. So there have been a lot of groups such as like Herb Chambers and Prime, some names that you're probably familiar with, that have bought a lot of family-owned dealerships. So for us, I think that's been something that we're very proud of, is that we can still be in this industry and be a family-owned dealer group. We also work with my dad, who's still very involved in the business, and my brother Ricky, who's actually been in the business for over 20 years. So we, between the four of us, titles really don't matter. We all really kind of do everything together. We don't have general managers in our stores, which most do. We really serve those roles and kind of divide and conquer. So I'm the primary person who I'd say runs the day-to-day of our Nashua store. My parents, who now live in Meredith full-time, are the face up there. And my brother Ricky kind of toggles between Nashua and Concord. So, so we're really a Volvo brand. Between our 3 locations, we did have a Mitsubishi store, which we did close right before COVID. COVID happened. So I just kind of wanted to, I felt it would be helpful to give a little background of where the car business was and where our brand was before 2020 or going into 2020. So I will say I started out the year with a very big addition. I had my husband and I welcomed our second baby on January 3rd. So 2020 started out already like a roller coaster, but a very positive one for us. And the car business has been very strong across the country for the last 5 years. In 2019, there were 17 million cars sold in the US. So the car business has been, I think since really the recession of 2008, 2010, it's really been a slow climb, and it's been pretty strong for the last 5 years. And then Volvo in 2010 was sold to a company that did a significant investment in the brand, and which really was huge for us. We were owned by Ford before that. And we saw from about 2010 to 2015 was a really pivotal, I guess, time for us. We went through a rebranding with a lot of research and development and investment. And it took about 5 years from the point that we were sold to when we saw a new product, which was, or I shouldn't say a new product, but it was our new XC90, which did exist before 2015, but it was a totally new car. And since then, since 2015, all of our product line has been relaunched, and it's been a great time to be with the brand and in the business. So going into 2020, like a lot of businesses, the economy is strong, and we were very hopeful for a really strong year. And I was out on maternity leave, like I said, since January. And I had started phasing back in at about 1 month postpartum, which was beginning of February, about part-time, just to kind of keep my pulse on things and fill that role that I'm supposed to be doing. So I would say right when it was the beginning of March when we started really having some serious conversations about the uncertainty as a result of COVID. And March started out actually like very strong for our business. We didn't notice too much of a shift in consumer behavior or purchasing intent at that point. But I would say right around when the pandemic was officially announced as a pandemic, which I think was March 12th.
12th or 13th.
Yeah, that's right when things really changed for us. So March was looking like it would be a normal month, but appointments really, from a sales perspective and a service perspective, really just fell off a cliff. And we were having, every day kind of felt like a fire drill for a while. We would meet as a family on the phone every morning and say, okay, what do we need to work on today? And it felt like it was a second full-time job for us almost, because I was just about to get back into work full swing, and I felt like I couldn't really attend to my normal things that I would normally do as a leader in the company, because we needed to respond to what was happening, and not just be reactionary, but also be proactive. So so for us, I would say right around that time, I'd say March, when March ended, or I guess I'll back up. So on March 16th, I have some notes here. We knew we were going to have to make some changes in regards to a staffing perspective. We were really trying to hold off on doing any type of furloughs or any type of pay adjustments on any employees for as long as we could, because we agreed that our goal through this was really to do as much for our staff and also our community as we could. We actually were really lucky. We're part of a group of about 20 Volvo dealers from around the country. Normally we meet about 4 times a year to help each other and go through business practices, anything financials that can help all of us run our business better. And we actually had a weekly conference call as a group to try to help each other through making some of these key decisions, which I would say was really helpful for us to get some ideas. So we had agreed as a family, we really wanted to hold off on furloughs, which we knew were inevitable at some point, but we didn't fortunately furlough any employees at any stores until I think it was Friday, March 20th that we furloughed, I think 8 people in Nashua. And then a week later, we furloughed 11 more people. So I think in total, it was about probably a third of our full-time employees that we did end up furloughing. And again, we wanted to keep as many people full-time as possible, but also balance people's safety. We didn't want to have more people. I think we were pretty lucky in a sense that in New Hampshire, we were the only state in this region that didn't have to close our business in our industry. We were deemed an essential business because people need cars in order to get to things like grocery stores and pharmacies. So we did not close. We tried to do as much, again, with as minimal staff to run our business and serve the needs of our customers as possible. But we didn't actually close at any point. Do you have anything to add as I'm kind of rambling here?
We also had to modify our hours. We started out because we thought it wasn't going to be that busy. We weren't getting as many service appointments or sales. So we were closing at 2 p.m.
At one point.
And then as things started to get busier, we started extending the hours. Slowly.
Yep. That was one of the first things that we did. So I think the New Hampshire stay-at-home order went into effect on the 27th, and initially that was until May 4th. So at that point, we had 19 full-time employees. We have about, just to put it in perspective, we have about almost 100 employees. We do have quite a few part-time employees across all 3 stores, but in total, that was about a third of our full-time staff in our Nashua location. And what felt was important for those people that were on furlough, we did pay for their healthcare 100% while they were on furlough, which I'll get to. It was actually not that long of an amount of time, fortunately. So, I would say that was the initial to modify the amount of staff that we needed to run our business. And then other things like, we needed to make sure we had enough cash, because anyone who owns a business, we had cash to be able to run our business with, as not being negative, but to know that if things took a really bad turn, that we could run our business for as long as possible, which in our case we were set up pretty well to be able to pay things like payroll. And we did apply during that time too, as well, at the end of March. I know that was one thing that my dad, Rich, was working on a lot and was very stressful.
Challenge
was the PPP loan, which we did secure for all 3 of our stores. So that was really kind of what happened at the end of March, at the very beginning of the pandemic. And then Kate, I know you asked me maybe to cover some difficulties that some of those changes placed on staff. And I think, for our service department, because we were running at about 50% of our normal volume, going into April, we had a very minimal staff. Our service manager was pretty much running the show. So we had 1 employee customer facing in Nashua, and then in service, and 1 in parts to work with the technicians when they needed to get parts for vehicles throughout the day. So that was really challenging. We also didn't have a receptionist. So we actually really, tried to use as much technology as we could, as we had available, to not have to compromise our customer service while we did have less people in the building. So one initial thing that we did was we had all of any voicemail that was left on a phone that could have come in from a customer was forwarded to a specific group of people via email if there was a voicemail left. So almost immediately we could make sure that if we missed a call from a customer, that I saw it, Linda saw it, Rich saw it, my brother, we could respond really quickly. And then our employees had the ability to, if they left their desk for whatever reason, they could just push a button and send all phone calls to their cell phone if they wanted to do so, which most people did, because again, we only had so many people in the building. And I think that worked out actually really well.
Yeah.
And it's something we still have set up, but we fortunately don't have the need for it because we're back at 100%, which I think I forgot to mention on April 13th. So about 3 weeks after we furloughed our first group of employees, we brought everyone back at 100%. We found out a couple days before that we had received PPP loans. And so at that point, it really gave us the security and the comfort level to feel like we could bring back our staff. And coincidentally, that's really when we noticed that business started to slowly pick up, or at least for us. Everyone that we contacted who was out on furlough, it was really important that they felt safe to come back to work. So we had a lot of processes set up from a cleaning standpoint to make sure that everyone felt comfortable. And surprisingly, we didn't have any employees who did not want to come back to work.
No.
It was kind of funny. Everyone, the 3-week period where we were really running pretty lean, we were very diligent about things like face masks and social distancing and cleaning surfaces very regularly. And when on April 13th, when everyone who was on furlough came back, it was like everyone, the vibe in the dealership was really nice because everyone was really excited to be back at work, which made me really happy for our staff, and just to know that everyone was, wanted to be back. And we really had to make sure that, again, we kind of went through all those practices again with everyone to make sure that people were following procedure with face masks, because it really, it's just not natural for us to stay so far apart from each other and to wear face masks around each other at work. It's just not a normal thing. So I would say furloughing people, or not furloughing people, but sitting down and having those conversations was really a challenge. That was, I think, the hardest part for us, because you're looking at someone who's worked for you, and I feel like we have our best group of people that we've had in a long time working here. And it was hard to say to someone, we're asking or telling you that we have to put you on a temporary leave, and explain why them over someone else. Those are some really hard conversations. But everyone was, again, they were really understanding, and they knew that we were going to do everything we could to keep serving our customers and keep business, going so that we could get everyone back to work as quickly as possible. Kate, I don't know if there are any questions, if you want me to stop.
There are questions, but do you have more you want to sort of cover in this introductory piece before we start in on questions?
No, I mean, I have some other notes on other things that we did as a business, because there were, I think, some key things that we did. I don't know if that would be helpful to people. Did you want me to cover that?
Yeah, why don't you talk about those, and then we'll sort of move into questions and see where it takes us.
Sure. Okay. So one thing that we did, I think we talked about, we had to make staffing changes. We modified our hours. And then obviously we had to look at expenses really quickly. What was really surprising to me were how many vendors in our industry that proactively contacted us to give us a reduced rate on certain things, such as a specific software that we use to appraise vehicles for customers. They proactively, and these are big companies that own, multiple products and software products in our industry, and they proactively contacted us and said, we're giving you 50% off in the month of April and May. So I was really encouraged by that. I would say there were a good handful of companies that did that, but we also had to proactively decide on some expenses that we had to cut. And we were really ready to hunker down and do whatever was needed to operate our business, even if that meant having us clean, anything that we had to do, which fortunately for us, we didn't, it didn't get to that point. So we did have to cut some marketing and some advertising But there were some things that we really felt strongly about not cutting,
Yes.
which I don't know if you want to talk about that at all. Like
Oh, you
things
mean-
like nonprofits, because we do.
Yeah, we do a lot of, we're involved with a lot of nonprofits throughout the state. And so, and I pretty much, that's my
Area.
area of responsibility. I've always done a lot with that. And I've actually been working since the COVID thing with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Nashua. I was on their board for 20 years. I'm on their advisory board now. And it's just so, talking about pivoting fast, the nonprofits, well, say the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Nashua, just with all the issues they have to deal with childcare, trying to provide for these kids, all the regulations, it's been really tough for them. And trying to keep these organizations going when their major fundraisers are not going to be able to happen in person. And now we're going to the virtual fundraisers. The Boys and Girls Club, we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do for our annual auction. That is their largest fundraiser. We're still not sure if we'll do a hybrid or if it will just be virtual.
Because it's in December.
Because it's in
Yeah.
December. It's December 5th. And then
Yeah.
CASA of New Hampshire covers the entire state. They advocate virtual, and it's for an hour. So there is a lot of concerns. That's just two nonprofits that I deal with. I deal with some more, the Concord Boys and Girls Club in the Lakes region as well, and some other nonprofits. But it's been really tough for that segment, I see, to just pivot so quickly.
Yeah.
But they are doing a great job, I have to say. And people are being very generous. So we're always encouraging everybody to get involved with that part.
Yeah.
Too.
So those are things that we're, encouraging also other businesses locally to, keep giving in those senses, because, there's just so many local nonprofits that just they just don't have the cash to survive for a long period of time. So I know that's been really something that Linda's been focusing on and working on at the same time. Some other things. So we have a text software, texting that we use to communicate with customers who are opted in, and we really have used that more than, I'd say, email. I'm sure many people would agree that when in the early days of COVID, let's say March and April, I can't tell you how many emails I received on a daily basis from retailers, whether it's web or just whether it's your gym or anything, just updates on their hours or what their cleaning practices are. I mean, so many companies were proactive in contacting people, but it was almost overwhelming. So we knew, for us, it was important that we contacted our customers so they felt comfortable servicing their vehicle if they need to, or they wanted to for whatever reason during this time. But we also used text messaging to contact our customers, which we felt was very effective form of communication during this time. Volvo also has a tool called Volvo Valet, which is an app that allows, it's almost like Uber. So if you wanted to have your car serviced, but you didn't want to actually come into the dealership, you can book your appointment through the app, and you can also track the driver coming to your house, and you can track them bringing your car back to the dealership, and then same thing when they return with the car. So we were up and running with that very quickly because it's a new software. And we maxed out with the amount of valets that we could do in a day because there was such demand for it. But it really felt like we were able to still help our customers who didn't want to come into the dealership. And I will say it was very interesting because Nashua, Concord, and Meredith, it's amazing how they're all in the same state, but we see such differences in the behavior of our customers. And it was very evident during COVID, because I would say the more south the store, the more concern of the customer from a safety perspective. So I think because of just maybe the population of, let's say, Meredith compared to Nashua, and how much more serious,
The amount of cases.
how many more cases it was in Massachusetts. It was, you know, it took a little while for customers, let's say in Meredith and Concord, to take wearing masks seriously and things like that.
They do now. Though.
They do now, yeah.
Yes.
But in the beginning, and I will say our company has been very healthy. Thank gosh. We've only had we did have one case actually in our Meredith store, and
they're fine.
And they're fine, and we didn't have it spread or anything. So that made us feel really good. That was probably about a month ago. So we also, you know, used social media, Google Plus Local, or Google My Business, and just anything we could to update business practices and hours. We did also use from on our phone system, whenever anyone called our main line, there was an automated message that was updated frequently. Usually I recorded it to let customers know what our hours were, and that we were doing things like off-site test drives, off-site deliveries, and sanitizing the vehicles, and that we had a free service for pickup and drop off for servicing, which was, again, that was really critical for us. So we really, I think, we really tried to pivot. I know that that term is used so much right now, how important it was to pivot during these times, but I felt like we did a really good job doing that. And like I said, fortunately for us, we were able to stay open and have the ability to pivot in many ways. And I know there's a lot of talk in our industry right now about selling cars online and making sure that you have the software to do so, and how important that is, because we did have some fellow dealers that we're friends with who are in Pennsylvania or New York, and they just couldn't open their showrooms. They weren't allowed to, and they had customers who wanted to buy cars or needed to buy cars, and it was very challenging for them. So that digital retailing is very, again, I think going to be very important for us in the future, and something that we're talking about and trying to find the right software so that we can do that. So I think one thing that we've learned through this experience is just, it's so important that you have the flexibility and the openness to do business how people want to do business, because you know, if you can't, if you're rigid, then it's going to be very hard to compete, especially in retail, in our industry, because we did not know what to expect, because we are an in-person business. I'd say 97% of our cars are sold face to face, because that's also how people still want to get in the car. They want to test drive it. You know, more servicing, I'd say, is more, there's more of a demand now. I think we were up to about a third of our appointments were valet or pickup and drop off, and people didn't actually have to come to the dealership, and we still have that available, but more people are coming back into the store because they feel comfortable, because we don't have a lot of people in the building. We're not a shopping mall. We're not Target. So people can have their space, and they feel comfortable coming in. And for the future, you know, I think at least in the car business, there's going to be very large supply issue going into the second part of the year. We lost about 2 months of production for new cars. And there is a large demand right now for dealers to buy or stock used inventory, which is very difficult to do. I know a lot of dealerships in the state are having a hard time having cars for sale for people. It's a very, very big concern right now. So fortunately for us, when a lot of dealerships were closed, we were actively buying cars. So when things did pick up, we had probably the biggest inventory we've ever had. So that actually helped us really in May and June. We had some very strong months, which again I would attribute to the fact that we had that inventory when dealers weren't buying cars and acquiring, we were doing that. And so in June, we shipped cars all around the country because we had the inventory that a lot of dealerships didn't have. So going into the second half of the year, we are anticipating that it'll be a little bit more challenging for us. And we haven't had to use the PPP money at all, because we've had I guess, some strong months for us because we've really stocked our cars well, and we really pivoted and I think done well with that. But I think the second half of the year, we're just, and we're very uncertain, not to be pessimistic, but I think a lot of people feel that way and just, they're not sure what to expect. So hopefully we don't have to use,
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
But
what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. So
Yeah, see.
Interesting. I wonder if, here, let me turn off the spotlight video here. I wonder if, there's a shortage of housing in the state as well, right? Like people can't find enough houses to buy. And so it's interesting that it's sort of the same. I don't know enough to know sort of historically if the two are often linked.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it just shows that a lot of people, I mean, if you look at, like, if you wanted to buy a pool, if you want to buy so many things right now, or even like up at the lake, right? There's no lakefront homes for sale.
No.
People are spending money on things that they can do locally, whether it's at their home or buying a bicycle or a basketball hoop, or, people aren't ready. They're not moving yet. But I think at some point, like we were so shocked with the demand for buying a car, like, during a time of such uncertainty. But I guess that just shows that people are certain that they're going to need a car, that they're comfortable spending that money. But I don't know, it's such a funny time. It's not like the 2008 recession. It's just not comparable in that sense, right? Not like yet, at least.
Have you seen changes given, gas prices and commutes, right? I think more people are commuting now, but still there are huge organizations that aren't sending people back to the office, maybe September, maybe not till next year. Have you seen that change what people are looking for when they're purchasing cars?
I wouldn't say, so for us, what's to come in our product line is a lot of electrification. Volvo's been very outspoken about that, but we don't necessarily have, we don't have a lot of product line. We do have hybrids. So I won't say, I can't say in terms of like, they're buying an electric car over a gasoline car, because we just don't have those products yet. But I would say the fact that, we're just selling a lot, it tells you that people are, they're valuing their car and having that freedom more than probably in the past. Because one thing in our industry that's very, very talked about right now is the concept of mobility and things like Uber and how that's going to affect the car business. And we've talked a lot about that as a family and just planning for the future. But it's amazing the difference in New Hampshire versus, let's say, just outside of Boston, and how those things are used by people, and trains and and I would say, if you live outside Boston and you commute into the city, I don't know how many people are going to be using a train right now or for a while. So, I did think people they value, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but they value having a vehicle now, the ability. And so, that wasn't something we were so concerned about for the New Hampshire market, because we're not, we don't have trains and buses that people rely on a day-to-day basis. But even though people are working from home, they still want to have a car.
Right. So. Yeah, I was just wondering if maybe people were buying more fun cars instead of, the super fuel efficient, good for my commute, right? Because things have changed, I wondered if it sort of had shifted preferences in that way.
I think part of the demand was in a lot of it in used vehicles too, because the prices dropped dramatically in March and April. And so people, you could buy cars at a, less expensive and offer them less expensively. So there were a lot of really good buys. There were great buys for people. So, and they,
not so much. Yeah. Now it's things
not
are
so
back
much
to
now,
normal.
but then it was like, it was crazy. People could get a really, really good deal on a car. So.
Yeah.
Even my sister told me yesterday she saw a commercial for tires that you can drive for 90 days or 120 days, and if you don't like them, you can bring them back. And it made me think about, especially if companies are concerned about potential future shutdowns, right? They want to try and get people in the door now. And so I just thought that was such an interesting example of, sort of being proactive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Again, you have to be flexible, and you have to give people we do something similar. With a used car, we'll give people 3 days to return the car on a used car if they change their mind, or 30 days to trade it back for something else. We've done that for a while, but
Long time.
yeah, it's definitely important to offer things like that.
Yeah. So question from one of our participants: everyone has something that keeps them up at night. So what was that before COVID? Did it change during? And then, is it different now, sort of on this end of things?
I think for us, I'd say the most challenging part of our business, because we're in retail, is we have a lot of employees. So and I think that's always the challenge, is making sure that you're taking care of your employees, you're doing the right things for their families, you're giving people a great environment at work. And that's always been, I think that's what I really spend my day to day, is meeting with our people, finding ways where we can be doing things better from a customer service standpoint, helping challenge people, helping offer them new opportunities. So that if anything, that's pretty much it. And I would say during COVID, that was the most stressful part, was the furloughing. Just that word, it was like, I dreaded it. And it was really hard. I mean, I had just come back from maternity leave, and I needed to and have these conversations with people and make these decisions. It was just really, really challenging. So that definitely kept me up a lot. And I'd say now, just not knowing what's coming. But I think that's the same for everyone, whether you have children going to the school year, or it's just no one really knows, and you hear there's a second wave, and so you're trying to prepare from a personal standpoint and from a professional standpoint. It's just challenging for people, I think. Right?
The uncertainty, I think, is the worst. That is affecting, I think, everybody. It doesn't matter what position you're in. It's going to affect everybody, because no one knows what's going to happen, and everybody's thinking about the fall and the winter. So,
but I think for us, coming to work, at least for me, has been great, because things have been going really well here since we brought everyone back, since April, and everyone's happy to be at work. So it's kind of like, it's like my escape. I can come to work, and things are going well, and everyone's happy and working hard and happy to be here. So that's, we feel really lucky in that sense.
We are very lucky.
Yeah. So outside of COVID, you talked about having about 100 people and multiple locations. Talk a little bit about, how do you keep people connected, and how do you create the culture that's cohesive when you have that number of people spread throughout the state and in different parts of the business? What does company culture look like for you?
That's another challenge of ours, is when we do one thing at one store, how do we, whether it's a process or just communication, right? It's so hard. I think that's one of the hardest parts of being a leader, is making sure that you're communicating well, but you're also anticipating what people expect from a communication standpoint too. Not leaving certain people out of conversations, because we really try to not make big decisions without the input of our staff. And that does usually involve people who, getting managers together across all the stores who sometimes haven't even met in person before. But, they're all, right.
And we have worked on it over the years too. We've done a lot of training.
Yes, we have.
Intercompany training with the different locations, which has really helped a lot. We have
had a lot of different leadership coaches over the years, where we've done retreats as a management group. We didn't do one. No, we did one last year. We had a gentleman who would come. He works in the automotive space, and he meets with just executive teams and brings everyone together. We talk about things like culture and how do we want to do business, what type of company do we want to be, and we try to get people involved in all those conversations and kind of come to a consensus as a group in terms of those things. And so we do things like that. We will have calls, conference calls as an all manager group. We used to do a lot of breakfast meetings across all of our sales departments. People get to see each other, because we actually do have a lot of employees who work for all the stores. So we have our sales manager, our GSM, our general sales manager in Concord, is also our general sales manager in Meredith. So she covers both those stores. And then we have and so basically we have one set of sales managers who cover both those stores right now. We just made that change. And I think that's actually going to be a very positive thing for the group. And we have, one marketing manager who goes to all the stores. So we have a lot of people who work with all the staff at all the stores. We have one business development center who is located in Nashua, actually just behind this wall, and they work with all the managers. So
accounting as well.
Accounting. So, we might seem like a lot of employees, but we all travel between the stores and just try to communicate a lot, whether it's on a conference call or, like Linda was saying, we do a lot of leadership, have consultants come in and do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and so along those lines, certainly when Nashua put in place their mask ordinance, I got we didn't have anything to do with it necessarily, but I got a flurry of emails on both sides, right? People who were not from Nashua, but would be doing all of their shopping there because they liked that they didn't have to worry about it, and people who had lived in Nashua their whole lives and were very upset. But I'm curious, sort of, to me, the bright side, if you will, despite where you sit on it, is that the businesses didn't have to be the ones, right? So if you're in Nashua as a business, you don't have to have that conversation. You don't have to, it just is. But so I'm curious how that's been for you in Nashua versus, you talked about trying to do things in one place versus the other two. And so how has that been?
Yeah, we haven't had any issues. Yeah, it's actually worked out really well. We do have some people every now and then who will walk in and we proactively approach them, but we haven't actually had any issues. So that's actually, been very positive. And again, I think, we don't see a high volume of people in our facility. So I think that helps, as opposed to a grocery store. I'm sure they deal with that. Oh, I can't even imagine more than we do.
The people have been really good in Meredith and in Concord as well.
Yeah.
Everybody has a mask on. Everybody that comes in.
Normally we would, I should say, if anyone's watching this, and
we're together all the time.
All the time.
Right. Yeah, I was just curious, right? Because when you're in different communities, there are different rules and different expectations. And so I was just curious how that, as an example, would have affected. So someone asked the question, so as you look back, if there was something you could have done differently or better, what would it be? And then on the flip side, what are you really proud of that you think you did really well?
Oh, during specific to COVID, I'm assuming?
I think so, yes.
Let's see, that we would have done differently. That's hard.
I don't know.
I'll have to think on that one a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were some other ways where we could have used technology a little bit differently. I would have liked if we had already had the ability to sell cars online if we needed to. We didn't have any customers who were upset that they couldn't buy a car online. Meaning, and when I say that, I mean, go on our website, select a car, click a button, and you can complete all the paperwork, and you don't actually have to ever go. You can actually right now, if you wanted to, go on our website, call us, say, I want to buy this car, submit a deposit, and we will bring the paperwork to you. So that's the difference, is that you can do a lot of it digitally, the paperwork process. So I think that would have been nice. It's a significant investment for the software, I'm sure, as you can imagine. And again, I'm just trying to, right now, thinking about the future, we're trying to gauge how important that is for our market because we haven't, is it because we haven't seen the demand? Is there still a demand? We just don't know because we're not asking. But before we make another big investment and before going into a time that could be very uncertain, that's kind of a big decision. But it would have been nice to have that before, so we would have known a little bit more. Yep. But I would say, I know, the statistics across the country are, I think before COVID, it was about 1% of cars were bought online. It's very small. And I think it bumped up to maybe 6 to 7%. And this is in markets like New York City, where you couldn't actually go into a showroom even if you wanted to. So we're looking at that. That would have been nice, I think, if we had that. And then that we did really well. I just think we were very, very, we didn't jump the gun in laying people off or making those cuts, which I'm really glad that we didn't, because and again, it was a very delicate balance of not having a full building full of people when you don't really understand, and we still don't understand COVID a lot. And then also I think we purchased about 300 cars between April and May, which was a very big financial decision.
That was very proactive.
It was very proactive. I mean, no one was buying cars. No dealers were like, hey, here's all my money. I'm stocking a full lot. Because what was happening, and I know we didn't talk too much about this, but so you have companies like Hertz and Enterprise who have all these rental cars and no one's flying. So they don't need these huge fleets of cars sitting in airports. So they have an agreement with manufacturers generally to sell them back to the brand. And then the brand usually tries to sell them back to the dealer network. So none of the dealers were buying these cars. But except us. We were like Volvo's #1 customer for like those 2 months. So what was happening is there was a huge supply, and then because no one was buying them, the value, they had to keep lowering the prices. So we were able to get some brand new cars, 2020s with, let's say, 7,000 miles. And they were just such great deals for people. So that's why, for us, that was such a great decision that my parents made. That was all them.
That was him. We've been through something like this before in 2008 too, and he did buy
a lot of cars. So when people decided they were comfortable to leave their homes and start buying a car, or if they had been researching what they wanted for a while and they were watching and shopping online, which a lot of people were, they said, oh my gosh, this is such a great deal. So, we did have a really good May and June for that reason, which again, that was a very proactive thing that I think we did. So
very interesting. So I'm curious, I've said all along through this that even those of us that have the same job, our jobs have changed, right? It's just different than it was. And so I'm curious for both of you, and not necessarily directly tied to the business, it could be in your personal life. But what have you learned about yourself? Are there things that you've learned about yourself through this?
Well, for me, it's been, again, I had a newborn, and I had a colicky newborn, so it was just very challenging for a while. I think just how much I value freedom, right? We value our being able to go and do the things that we want to do. Because, for me, I say this a lot, my life actually didn't change too much during this period because I was going to be home no matter what with a baby, right? I mean, where are you going to go in the winter with a newborn during flu season, even if COVID wasn't here? So, but I think even more so, it teaches you how much certain things that are important, like being healthy and having the time and ability to go see your loved ones and, what's really important. So I know I've always been someone who values activity and movement and nutrition. And now, it's just reinforced how important that is. And just taking care of yourself and taking care of those around you and your community and right.
Yeah, it's true.
How about you?
Oh yeah, that's definitely what I learned is how important it is to be able to be with people. I don't think you realized how important it was until we went through this.
I know there was a day I remember in April. You remember this day when she came down from Meredith and she was standing across the other side of the office from me. And I think she almost started crying because she couldn't actually hug me, and it just killed her.
It was tough.
Yeah. Mother's Day was hard. Mother's Day was hard. I hadn't yet,
very difficult.
Yeah. It's just, things we take for granted, right? That I don't think we ever thought that we would take hugs for granted, right? But it's certainly changed. Yeah. So if anyone has any final questions, feel free to stick them in. But one question I have for you is, so is there something about Lovering Auto Group that we don't know that we all should know? Things that you would like to get out there?
I don't think so. I think, I
think.
We might only be a Volvo store, but we do, we've helped a lot of family and friends with any type of vehicle need. We do service all makes and models. So we're not just a Volvo store. And I always tell people we're not, and I've heard my dad say this recently, we're not necessarily car people. We're people. Really, because that's what it comes down to. And I think for me, like I wasn't sure I wanted to get into the family business until I was a few years out of school when I was living in New York, because I didn't love cars and I thought I had to love cars to be in this
No.
business. But it's really not about that. And that's what I've learned working here
Yeah.
over the years, is it's really just about creating a business that where you're always trying to do better and serve whatever type of product or service that you're doing, do a better job every day, and make it a great place for people to work. So just, I think it's important for people to know that those are our values as a company, and that we really just, we're not perfect like every business, right? And I know a lot of people are when I get a lot of reactions when I say I'm the president of a car group, like they're like,
What?
you're a woman, A, that's weird, and B, car people, now I have, my hairs are standing up on my back. So
Yeah.
that's what I love about being in this business, is proving people wrong in that sense, giving people a different idea of, of a car dealership, and not, that perception that goes with it, and that where I guess we're really different in that sense. So
Yeah. It's really connections. It's making connections with people. It really is. And I mean, that's what's so much fun about it, is meeting so many different people, and you really establish long-term relationships with people.
Yeah. You guys have.
Yeah, we have
definitely.
over the years. It's been great.
Well, and that was my thought when you were talking early on about your employees, and when you had to have those furlough conversations and all of that, was, I mean, there's so much trust in your business, but with your employees, right? With people staying, and with, having to make these difficult decisions, but with customers, right? That's such a big part of how people base those kinds of decisions.
Definitely. And we take hiring so seriously. We do a disc analysis with most of our hires. We have multiple interviews. And then in like the nick of time, you have to choose who you're going to furlough, but no, your business is going to come back at some point, and you want those people to come back. How are they going to feel if you furlough them? And then you want them, it's just like all these things that you just didn't anticipate you would have to think about, right? And conversations you would have to have. So yeah, definitely it was very tricky, but thanks again for asking us to be part of this.
Yeah. I'll just give you this one last comment. So it says, I think it's great that there are so many women taking the lead in this industry, and I loved the TV commercials with Rich and Linda.
Oh gosh.
I'm glad they did.
I'm the one who stopped those, so I'm sorry. It was very hard for me to write scripts of corny things with my parents, but they were a good pastime. It was fun. I know you guys really enjoyed it.
We had a good time.
Thank you for the
thank
feedback.
you.
Maybe there's a future iteration at some point down the road.
I know, right?
We'll have to at some point.
We had fun with those.
Yeah, we did.
Well, thank you both for being here. This was so fantastic. So nice to learn about you, and glad to hear that things are going well and you're back on your feet, and we'll hope certainly that things stay that way. And certainly we're always here if we can do anything for you. So thanks again for being a part of this. To both of you, thanks to all who joined us. We will place this on YouTube afterwards so you can rewatch. Until then, have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. You as well. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.